What if Ferrari has found a way to hack the aerodynamics on the straight just to destroy Mercedes' biggest advantage in Miami? The beginning of this story is not in Miami. It is in the problem that Ferrari has not been able to hide since the season began. Because while the superficial results show podiums and a certain stability, the technical reality of the SF26 is much more uncomfortable. Ferrari is not losing because of small details. It is losing at the most critical point of modern Formula One, straight line efficiency and energy management, just where Mercedes has built its current dominance. Since the first races, the pattern has always been the same. Ferrari gets closer, competes in technical sectors, even shows moments where it seems to have the car more balanced in curves, but as soon as the long straights arrive, everything collapses. The difference in top speed, estimated between 5 and 7 kilometers per hour, is not just a number, it is a strategic condemnation. It means they can't attack, they can't defend, and most importantly, they can't control a run without depending on external factors. And this is where the problem becomes even more serious. Because when we analyze the real race pace, the difference with Mercedes is not marginal, it is structural. We're talking about up to a second per lap in real conditions, a gap that is not explained by errors or bad luck, but by a profound technical disadvantage that directly affects the DNA of the car. Ferrari has a good car, but not the right car to win. The irony is that this deficit does not come from a lack of overall design capacity. In fact, the SF26 has proven to be one of the most solid cars in terms of aerodynamic behavior in curves, with a base that allows drivers to squeeze the car in technical areas. But that same configuration, optimized to generate load, is brutally penalizing aerodynamic resistance, turning each straight line into a cumulative disadvantage that is impossible to ignore. That's why Ferrari couldn't follow the traditional path of small improvements. It was not enough to adjust details or optimize settings. They needed a conceptual change, something that would directly attack the root problem without compromising the car's cornering strength. And that is precisely where the Miami plan is born. During 5 weeks without races, while the rest of the teams were also working on evolutions, Ferrari made a key decision, not to evolve what existed, but to reinvent how the car behaves on a straight line. It wasn't about gaining a few tenths, it was about eliminating a disadvantage that was defining the entire season. And that meant taking risks, exploring solutions at the limit of the regulations, and betting on a concept that, if it works, can completely change the competitive balance. Because Ferrari knows something that many overlook: Miami is not just any circuit. It is a track where straight-line speed is not an advantage. It is the difference between fighting for victory or disappearing from a competitive map. And if they didn't solve that problem here, the season could begin to slip away for good. This is the real starting point. We are not talking about another improvement. We're talking about a desperate, calculated, and extremely aggressive response to a weakness that threatened to put Ferrari out of the fight before it really began. And just when it seemed like Mercedes had everything under control, Ferrari decided to change the rules of the game. This is where Ferrari stops reacting and starts directly attacking the problem with a solution that completely breaks the traditional approach, because Ferrari's so-called trick is not a conventional improvement. It is not more load. It is not less weight. It is not simply optimizing what they already had. It is changing the behavior of the car at the most critical moment of the lap, the transition between the curve and the straight. And they do it through the most radical evolution of their aerodynamic concept, the Macarena type rear spoiler. This system, in essence, seeks something that seemed impossible without sacrificing performance in other areas, having maximum load in the curve, and at the same time eliminating resistance on the straight in a much more aggressive way than a conventional DRS. The key is how the aileron moves. While all teams work with limited flap openings, Ferrari takes this concept to the extreme, allowing a much wider rotation of the aerodynamic element, which drastically reduces drag when the car enters full acceleration. This means that on a straight line, the SF26 changes its personality. It goes from being a loaded and stable car when cornering to a much more efficient one, almost as if it released a layer of resistance that previously constantly slowed it down. And here is the key point. They are not trying to match Mercedes, they are trying to neutralize their structural advantage from the physics of the car. But what's really important is not just the concept, but how Ferrari has solved the biggest problem of the previous version. Because this system already existed in a first iteration, and it failed. It failed because it generated extreme instability during braking, an unpredictable behavior that caused the car to lose its rear right at the most delicate moment of the turn. It was not usable in real qualifying or race conditions. Now, Ferrari has completely redesigned the system architecture. They have reduced the weight of the assembly, replacing hydraulic components with much more precise electric microactuators, which allows much finer control of the aileron movement. This not only improves efficiency, but eliminates the activation lags that cause such erratic behavior. In other words, now the system is not only more aggressive, it is also much more stable. And here comes another key factor that many are not considering: timing. It's not just about opening or closing the aileron, but when and how you do it. Ferrari has worked on the electronic management of the system so that the transition between load and low resistance is progressive, avoiding sudden changes in the balance of the car. This is what makes this evolution really dangerous for its rivals, because it does not compromise the driver's confidence, which was the great limit of the previous version. If this works as internal simulations indicate, the impact is immediate. Ferrari could recover a large part of the top speed that it currently loses, reduce the difference on the straight, and most importantly, once again have strategic tools in the race: defend position, attack with DRS, and better manage the pace without depending exclusively on corner performance. But this movement also has a much deeper background. Ferrari is pushing the limits of the regulation, exploring a gray area in the interpretation of active aerodynamics within the new regulations. It is not just a technical improvement, it is a declaration of intent. They are willing to take risks to close the gap with Mercedes. And that completely changes the scenario. Because if this system works, we are not facing a simple evolution, we are facing a turning point in the season. And this is where everything converges, because Miami is not simply going to be the place where Ferrari tests an improvement. It is going to be the stage where we will know if this concept is a real solution or a risk that can be very expensive. The Miami circuit exposes exactly the weak point that Ferrari has been trying to correct. Long straights, long acceleration zones, and multiple DRS opportunities make top speed the determining factor in performance. It is, in essence, the worst possible scenario for the Ferrari at the beginning of the season, and at the same time, the best test bed for this new concept. If the trick works here, it works anywhere. But what is at stake is not just a performance improvement, it is the strategic control of the race. Because until now, Ferrari has been running conditioned, unable to defend itself from Mercedes on the straight, and forced to overexert the car in sectors where they were strong. This causes wear and tear, errors, and above all, completely limits your chances of winning. With this new system, that could change radically. If Ferrari manages to reduce that difference on the straight, even partially, the effect in the race is immediate. They will be able to defend position without depending exclusively on traction when exiting corners. They will be able to attack by taking better advantage of DRS, and most importantly, they will be able to manage the pace without entering areas of constant risk. It is a change that not only affects speed, it affects the entire dynamics of a race. But here comes the other side of the coin. Because this concept, no matter how refined it is still extreme. And Miami not only punishes a lack of speed, it also punishes instability. The strong braking after long straights, the changes of direction, and the technical areas of the second sector will test whether Ferrari has really solved that balance problem that they had in the first version. If the car shows unpredictable behavior again, the price can be very high: errors, excessive degradation, or even incidents. Furthermore, there is a factor that can turn this into a real bomb within the paddock: Mercedes' reaction. Because if Ferrari suddenly appears with a significant improvement on the straight, it will not only be a surprise, it will be a direct threat. And that opens the door to two scenarios. Either Mercedes responds on the track, or a battle begins off it with technical reviews, political pressure, and possible questions about the legality of the system. This is what is really at stake in Miami. It's not just a race, it's a potential turning point in the season. Ferrari arrives with an aggressive bet designed to close a gap that seems structural. If it works, they not only close the distance, they completely change the competitive balance. Because at that moment, the narrative stops being Ferrari chases Mercedes and becomes Mercedes has to defend itself against Ferrari. And that is the true magnitude of this great trick. It is not just another piece, it is the possibility of rewriting the season for Miami. Ferrari has reached a point where it could no longer wait, and Miami represents exactly that, the moment where excuses end and solutions are put to the test in the most demanding scenario possible. Because everything we have seen so far, the podiums, the good sensations in the corners, the apparent closeness in qualifying, is completely in the background compared to the reality that has defined their season, a structural disadvantage against Mercedes that could only be resolved with something radical. And Ferrari has decided to take a risk. The trick they bring is not a guarantee of success, it is a bet. A bet that can return them to the real fight for victories, or further highlight the limitations of the project if it does not work as they expect. But what is clear is that the approach changes. Ferrari stops reacting and starts proposing, stops adapting, and starts putting pressure. And that's what makes this moment so important. Because if the system complies, they will not only be closer to Mercedes, they will be in a position to fight directly, to condition races, to force their rival to respond. But if he fails, the blow will not only be in performance, it will also be in confidence, in technical direction, and in the direction of the entire season. Miami is not going to define the champion, but it can define who really has control of the championship from now on. And in the midst of all this, Ferrari has sent the clearest message of all. They are not going to accept being the second best team. Let me know in the comments what you think about all this.